Welcome to another deep dive. We're going to be using a pretty unique source material this time around.
Oh, what is it?
A children's geography book.
Huh.
Yeah, so we thought it'd be a fun way to kind of revisit some of the basics of geography,
Right.
like weather, climate, even natural resources,
Yeah.
specifically in South Africa.
Sounds interesting. It's like going back to the fundamentals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the simplest explanations can be the best. So let's start with something we experience every day. Weather.
Okay.
What exactly is weather?
Well, you could think of it as the mood of the atmosphere at a specific time and place.
Okay.
It's what you see when you glance out the window, like
Ah.
sunshine, clouds, rain, maybe even wind. And it's always changing because the atmosphere is constantly moving.
Right. So what are the main components of weather then?
Well, there are four key elements: temperature, cloud cover, rainfall, and wind.
Okay, temperature makes sense. How hot or cold the air is.
Yeah, and we measure it in degrees Celsius using a thermometer.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about cloud cover? Is it just how many clouds are in the sky?
Pretty much. It's a measure of how much of the sky is covered by clouds, ranging from a clear sky to totally overcast.
And then there's rainfall, which we need for, well, everything. How do we measure rainfall?
With a rain gauge.
Oh, right, a rain gauge.
It collects the rain and lets us measure it in millimeters.
Gotcha. Speaking of rain, did you know that some deserts get less than 250 millimeters of rain a year,
Wow.
while rainforests can get over 2,000? Crazy, right?
That's a huge difference.
All right, on to wind now. It seems simple enough, but how do we measure it? And why is it so important?
Well, wind is just air in motion, and it has both speed and direction.
Okay.
We measure wind speed in kilometers per hour, and we use things like windsocks and wind vanes to figure out the direction.
I see.
Oh, and here's a little something to remember. Wind is named after the direction it comes from, not where it's going.
Oh, that's a good point. A lot of people get that confused.
Yeah, so the north wind blows from the north towards the south.
Gotcha. Okay, let's put our weather knowledge to the test. First question, and this is straight from our geography guide.
Okay, hit me.
Which instrument is used to measure temperature?
A thermometer.
Nailed it. Okay, next one. What do we call a completely cloud-covered sky?
Overcast.
Yes, overcast. And last weather question. What unit of measurement is used for rainfall?
Millimeters.
Right again. Okay, moving on from weather, let's talk about climate.
Okay.
So what exactly is climate, and how's it different from weather?
Well, think of climate as the average weather in a place over a long time, like 30 years or more.
Okay.
It's all about the long-term patterns, not just what's happening today.
So weather's like a snapshot, and climate is the whole photo album.
Exactly. We describe climate using terms like hot, warm, cold, cool, dry, wet, and humid. For example, a desert has a hot, dry climate, while a rainforest has a hot, wet climate.
That makes sense. Did you know that the Earth's climate is actually changing right now?
Yeah, due to human activities causing global warming, right?
That's right. It's a big issue with serious consequences.
Absolutely.
Think about this. If you were moving to a new place, would you care more about the weather on a certain day or the climate of that region over many years?
I definitely care more about the climate, right? It determines what you can grow, what kind of clothes you need. It impacts your whole life, really.
For sure. Okay, let's see what our guide has for us on climate. First question. Which term describes the average weather over a long period of time?
Climate.
Easy one. Okay. Which of these phrases describes climate? Sunny and warm today, hot, dry summers and mild winters, or windy and rainy this afternoon?
The one about summers and winters, that describes long-term weather patterns.
You got it.
Yeah, that.
Last climate question, true or false? Climate and weather are the same thing?
False.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears again from the atmosphere to the ground.
Okay.
Let's talk about natural vegetation.
Right.
What exactly does that mean? And how does climate affect the types of plants we see around the world?
Good question. Natural vegetation is basically plants that grow in an area naturally without any human interference.
Yeah.
And climate plays a huge role in what kinds of plants can grow where. Like, think about deserts. They're hot and dry, so you get things like cacti and succulents that are adapted to store water.
Right. And then rainforests, which are super wet, have all those tall trees and tons of different plants.
Exactly. Different climates support different types of plant life.
Speaking of which, did you know that plants have developed some really amazing adaptations to survive in different climates? Like cacti have spines to reduce water loss, and some trees shed their leaves in the winter to conserve energy. Pretty neat, huh?
It is. Plants are pretty incredible.
All right, so let's zoom out a bit.
Yeah.
What are the three main types of natural vegetation we see around the world, and how do they relate to climate?
Well, you've got forests, grasslands, and deserts. Forests need lots of moisture, so they thrive in wet, warm climates.
Makes sense.
Grasslands are usually found in drier areas where trees can't really grow. And then deserts, of course, are all about surviving those really harsh, dry conditions.
It's fascinating how climate shapes these different ecosystems, isn't it? Think about the area you live in. What kind of natural vegetation do you see? How does your local climate impact the plants that can grow there?
I've never really thought about it like that.
It's something to consider. All right, time for a vegetation quiz.
Hit me.
What is natural vegetation?
Plants that grow naturally in an area without any human help.
Perfect. Okay, next one. Which climate would likely support a forest?
A wet and warm one.
Right again. Last vegetation question.
Yeah.
What type of vegetation is common in deserts?
Oh, cacti and succulent.
Bingo. Okay, let's shift gears one more time. This time we're going underground.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
Let's talk about the resources we find beneath the Earth's surface, specifically in South Africa. What makes this country so unique when it comes to mineral wealth?
Well, South Africa's got a wealth of valuable minerals and resources, like gold, diamonds, platinum, and even coal. It's really shaped the country's economy and history.
Okay, so first things first. What are minerals? I mean, are they just shiny rocks, or is there more to it?
Minerals are naturally occurring substances found in rocks. They're basically the building blocks of the Earth's crust.
Okay.
And some of them, like gold, iron, and diamonds, are considered really valuable because they're rare and can be used for a lot of different things.
Makes sense. And what about coal? It's often grouped with minerals, but it's different, right?
Yeah, coal is actually a rock formed from ancient plant remains over millions of years. It's a fossil fuel that's been used for energy for a long time.
I see.
But both minerals and coal are what we call non-renewable resources, meaning they take a super long time to form and we can't replace them as quickly as we use them.
So we got to be careful how we use them.
Exactly. We have to be mindful that they're finite.
Gotcha. So different minerals have different uses, right? Like, what are some of the ways we use the minerals found in South Africa?
Oh, tons of ways. Gold, for example, is used in jewelry.
Right.
It resists corrosion, so it's got technological applications too. Iron is a big one. It's used to make steel.
Okay.
Diamonds are super hard, so they're used in cutting tools and, of course, in jewelry. And coal, like you said, is a major source of energy for making electricity.
Makes sense. Did you know South Africa is a top producer of gold and platinum? Those minerals have had a big impact on the country's economy and history.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's amazing how the geology of a place can shape its development, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's fascinating how the resources beneath our feet can influence entire societies.
Think about this. Why is it important to use mineral resources wisely? Knowing they're non-renewable and their extraction can have big environmental and social impacts, how can we make sure we're using them sustainably?
That's a big question. It's a balance between needing those resources and protecting our planet and the people on it.
Right, it's a challenge, for sure. Okay, let's have a little mineral quiz.
Okay.
First up, what is a mineral?
A naturally occurring substance found in rocks.
Nice one. Okay, is coal a renewable or a non-renewable resource?
Non-renewable. It takes millions of years to form, so it's a finite resource.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And last one, what's one major use of iron?
It's used to make steel.
Spot on. All right, from the resources themselves, let's talk about getting them out of the ground. Mining.
Okay.
I've seen photos of those giant open pit mines, and it's just incredible how huge they are.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive.
But mining, while we needed to get those resources, can also have a big impact on the environment, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of a dilemma, isn't it? Mining gives us these important resources, but it can also come with a cost to the environment. So we need careful planning and responsible practices to minimize any negative impacts.
So what exactly is mining? And what are some of the ways we extract those minerals and coal?
Mining is basically the process of extracting minerals and coal from the earth. It involves different techniques like digging, blasting, and processing to get to those valuable resources. We use different methods depending on what we're mining and where it is. Open pit mining involves digging these massive open holes to get minerals near the surface. And then there's shaft mining, where tunnels are dug deep underground to reach minerals further down.
So those giant craters in photos, that's open pit mining.
Exactly.
It seemed like that would be super disruptive to the environment.
It can be. But it's often the most efficient way to get to large amounts of minerals close to the surface. Things like coal, copper, and iron ore.
Okay. And shaft mining. That sounds like going into the heart of the earth.
Pretty much. They dig tunnels and shafts to get to deeper deposits of things like gold, silver, and diamonds. Both types of mining have their own challenges and potential impacts on the environment.
Now for the not-so-fun part. The environmental consequences of mining. I imagine it can be pretty rough on ecosystems.
You're right. Mining can lead to habitat loss for plants and animals since you have to clear and dig up large areas. Soil erosion can become a problem because you're disrupting the ground cover. And then there's the risk of water pollution from the chemicals used in the mining process.
Oh?
Those
Yeah.
chemicals can seep into water sources and contaminate rivers, lakes, and even groundwater. And then there's air pollution from dust and emissions from mining equipment.
It sounds like a lot to manage. But I did read that mining companies are often required to minimize their environmental impact and actually try to rehabilitate the mined areas.
Yeah, that's true in many countries. There are regulations to promote responsible mining practices and try to reduce environmental damage. Reclamation efforts involve restoring the land, planting vegetation, and managing water runoff to try to prevent erosion and pollution.
That's good to hear. But it also makes me wonder, how do we balance our need for these resources with the need to protect our environment?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah, it's a conversation we need to keep having. Speaking of mining, let's see what our guy has for us. First question. What type of mining involves digging those large, open holes?
Open pit mining.
You got it. Next one. What's one way mining can pollute water?
Through the release of chemicals used in the process, they can get into water sources.
Correct. Last mining question. True or false? Mining has absolutely no impact on the environment,
False.
obviously. Okay, let's shift our focus from the environmental side of mining to the people involved.
Okay.
It's a demanding and often dangerous job. What are some of the risks they face, and what's done to keep them safe?
It's true, mining is tough, and there are inherent risks. Things like rock falls, cave-ins, and explosions. And then there are the long-term health risks from being exposed to dust and other hazardous substances. One of the most serious is a lung disease called silicosis.
Oh, wow.
It's caused by inhaling silica dust, which is common in mines.
That sounds scary. So what's being done to protect miners?
Safety is a huge priority in mining. There are strict regulations and protocols. Miners have to wear protective gear like helmets, respirators, and safety glasses. There are rules for ventilation systems, blasting procedures, and everyone has to go through training programs to minimize the risks.
That's good to know. So mining affects the environment, but it also has impacts on the communities where it takes place.
Oh, absolutely. Mining can be a double-edged sword for communities.
How?
On one hand, it creates jobs and boosts the local economy, which is great.
Right.
But it can also displace people if their land is needed for mining. And if things like air and water pollution aren't managed properly, there can be negative health consequences for those living nearby.
So it's about finding a balance between the benefits and the risks.
Exactly. We need to find a balance between economic benefits and the well-being of the communities.
Makes sense. Did you know that in many countries, there are laws specifically to protect the health, safety, and rights of miners?
Oh yeah, for sure. Those laws cover things like working hours, safety training, and compensation for injuries or illnesses related to their work.
That's important. We have to make sure the people working in this industry are protected. Think about this. What are some of the challenges and benefits of working in a mine? Considering the risks, the rewards, and the overall impacts on individuals and communities.
It's a good point. We often focus on the end product, but we need to remember the people who make it all possible.
Absolutely. Okay, before we move on, let's do a quick mining quiz.
All right.
First question. What's one of the health risks associated with mining?
Silicosis, that lung disease from inhaling silica dust.
That's right. Next one, what's one piece of safety equipment that miners are required to wear?
A helmet.
Good one. And last question, true or false? Mining can have both positive and negative impacts on communities.
True.
Of course.
Oh.
Okay, now let's shift our focus from the physical act of mining to something a bit more.
Or what? Abstract, huh?
Yeah, a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's all about kind of recognizing the bigger picture and, understanding that these concepts, they all tie together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it all comes back to this planet we're living on, right?
Exactly. And using this kid's geography book, it's been kind of fun to see these things in a simpler way. It reminds us how amazing our planet is, from the way weather changes every day to all the different ecosystems that exist.
Yeah, it's easy to take those things for granted, I guess.
Definitely. We talked about a lot today, but it's really just a starting point.
Right.
We started with weather, those 4 key elements we see all the time. And then we looked at climate, those long-term patterns that affect whole regions.
And we talked about natural vegetation, too. All those plants that have figured out how to survive in all kinds of climates, from jungles to deserts. It's pretty amazing.
Totally. And then we dug a little deeper, literally, to talk about minerals and coal,
Yeah.
especially what we find in South Africa.
Yeah, it's like we took a trip through the layers of our planet.
Right. From the air to the stuff buried underground.
I know, and we learned some pretty wild facts along the way. Do you know, some deserts get less rain in a whole year than some rainforests get in a single day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's just incredible how diverse our planet is, you know?
For sure. And we also talked about mining. It gives us these resources we need, but it can also impact the environment and the people living near those mines.
Right, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Finding ways to get what we need while protecting the planet and being fair to the folks working in those mines.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that everything's connected
Yeah.
and our actions have consequences.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. What choices can we make to ensure a good future for ourselves and the people who come after us? Like, how can we use the resources we have in a smart way while protecting the environment?
That's a tough one. But it's definitely something we got to think about.
Right. It's all about seeing the bigger picture and understanding how everything fits together.
Yeah, we're all part of this big interconnected system.
Exactly. And we all have a part to play in taking care of it.
Absolutely. It's about making choices that support a healthy planet for everyone.
It's amazing how much we've learned just from this kid's geography book.
Right. It's been a real eye-opener for me revisiting these basic concepts.
Yeah, and what's even more amazing is that we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more out there to learn about our planet.
It's true. The more you learn, the more you realize there's still so much to discover.
Exactly. But I think this deep dive has given us a good foundation, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
It's helped us appreciate the incredible complexity of our planet, from something as simple as the weather to the vast ecosystems that support life. It's just mind-blowing when you really think about it.
I know. It's easy to forget how amazing and intricate everything is.
It really is. But this deep dive, starting with this children's book, it's been a good reminder. You know, it's brought these concepts back to life in a way that's both fun and thought-provoking.
Totally. And it's a good reminder that we're all connected to this planet.
Exactly. And that our actions have an impact on it. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to encourage everyone to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions about the world around us.
Yes. The more we understand about our planet, the better equipped we'll be to protect it.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery.